The Grand Hall in Geneva was packed. Presidents, prime ministers, CEOs, cameras. This was the Global Leadership Summit, and the world was watching, live. Under the blinding lights and flashing cameras, Donald Trump stepped up to the microphone. He smiled. That smug, familiar smile. Then, without warning, he turned slightly and said, "The problem with African leadership is they talk big, but deliver nothing. It's like giving a child the keys to a Ferrari." Laughter rippled through parts of the audience, but not from the African delegates. Some lowered their eyes, others shifted uncomfortably. But in the front row, one man didn't move. Captain Ibrahim Traoré sat still, silent, watching. A camera zoomed in on his face. He didn't blink, he didn't flinch, he just stared. And the whole world could feel it, the quiet before the storm. A second laugh came from Trump, louder, bolder. And then, something strange happened. Traoré stood up, not quickly, not angrily, just calm. The room held its breath. Every lens turned. Every ear listened. And even Trump's smile faded, just a little. The world had no idea what was coming. You could hear a pin drop. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, draped in his olive green uniform and signature red beret, stepped toward the stage, without a single note in his hand. His boots made soft thuds on the polished marble floor. Trump leaned back slightly, eyes narrowed. Traoré turned to face the audience first, not Trump. Then, with a voice as calm as still water, he said, "There's something dangerous about laughing at pain you don't understand." Whispers flew, cameras zoomed in. He continued, "When you call us children, remember, we have survived the things your countries caused and then walked barefoot into leadership." A woman in the third row gasped softly. "We inherited broken systems, stolen dreams, borders you drew without asking. Yet we rise every day not with bombs, but with books, not with power, but with purpose." Now the murmurs turned to applause, from unexpected places. Trump folded his arms. Traoré then turned, calmly facing Trump. His voice dropped lower. "You laugh, Mr. Trump, but your laughter sounds scared." Trump didn't respond. He just stared. And in that moment, everyone knew something bigger had just begun. The applause faded into a silence that was louder than any roar. Trump tapped the microphone as if to interrupt, but thought better of it. Traoré remained standing. Then something powerful happened. A young woman from Kenya, barely 30, an environmentalist, rose from her seat. Eyes glistening, voice trembling, she said, "I came here thinking Africa had no voice, but I was wrong. Thank you, Captain." She sat down, and then another, a finance minister from Senegal, then an ambassador from South Africa. Each person stood, not with fury, but with tears. Traoré wasn't shouting, he wasn't grandstanding, he was just telling truth, and the truth had found its way into hearts. Trump leaned over to whisper something to a nearby aide, but all eyes were on Traoré. He took a breath and spoke again. "Africa doesn't need your approval. We need you to stop underestimating us." Someone in the crowd shouted, "Say it again," and he did. "We need you to stop underestimating us." That sentence would become a hashtag, a headline, and for many, a lifeline. Backstage, a producer whispered into a mic, "Clip that. The world is going to feel this one." The cameras rolled non-stop. Millions watched from every corner of the world. Captain Ibrahim Traoré turned fully toward Trump now, his face unreadable. He paused, then said gently but firmly, "You speak of Africa as if it were yours to define." The room shifted. Phones went up. Cameras zoomed in. "But you've never walked barefoot to school on an empty stomach. You've never held your mother's hand while she cried over a hospital that ran out of medicine." The words struck deep. Even some in the U.S. delegation leaned forward. "You say we're poor, but forget who took the wealth. You say we're weak, but ignore how we've survived, decade after decade, without your help, without your respect." Trump squinted, trying to interrupt. But Ibrahim raised his hand, not to silence, but to steady the moment. "Africa doesn't need pity. We need partnership. And if you can't offer that, then kindly step aside." The audience went dead silent. And somewhere backstage, a sound engineer whispered, "We're not recording history. It's recording us." As Traoré returned to his seat, something unexpected happened. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a worn, faded photograph. He held it up without saying a word. The room leaned in. It showed a small, barefoot boy, standing beside a broken chalkboard under a tree, holding a stick like it was a pen. The child's clothes were torn, but his eyes, they burned with fire. Traoré's voice dropped to a whisper. "This was me, 19 years ago, teaching younger children how to write, because we had no school." Gasps echoed through the room. "You call us failures. But where were you when I was teaching under trees, when my people built classrooms with their bare hands?" He looked straight into the camera. "If we survive that, then Mr. Trump, you will not break us with your words." Mothers watching from Dakar to Detroit wiped away tears. In Nigeria, an old man at a barber shop stood up and whispered, "This man, he speaks for all of us." That one photo would circle the internet millions of times in the next 24 hours. Behind the podium, President Sahle-Work Zewde of Ethiopia wiped a tear from her eye. She wasn't alone. A French diplomat leaned back, visibly shaken. A South Korean journalist tweeted, "This is not a summit. This is a reckoning." Donald Trump sat down, red-faced. He tried to laugh, but nobody laughed with him. Then something totally unexpected happened. An elderly African-American pastor, invited as an observer, slowly stood up and said, "Captain Traoré, I buried 3 brothers who never saw a future beyond the ghetto. But you gave me hope today." The entire room rose to its feet. A standing ovation. But Ibrahim did not smile. He turned and whispered to the pastor, "I speak only because so many never got the chance." The room stilled again. Outside the hall, protesters who had gathered to challenge global inaction on Africa's debt crisis suddenly changed their chants. They now shouted one word: "Respect, respect, respect." And inside, Trump leaned toward his aide and mumbled, "Who the hell is this guy?" But the world had already decided. They knew exactly who he was. Hours after the summit speech, Traoré returned to his quiet hotel room in Geneva. No media, no cameras, just silence. He poured water into a glass, but his hands were shaking. He wasn't afraid. He was overwhelmed. On the desk was a dusty old laptop. He opened it, not expecting much. But there was one new email. Subject line: "You spoke for my father." It came from a teenage girl in rural Ghana. "Captain, my father was a teacher who died before his village got its first classroom. He used to say, 'One day someone will speak loud enough that even the West will have to listen.' Today, you were that someone." Traoré sat still. Tears welled up, but he didn't let them fall. He just stared at the screen. He would have been proud, sir. So proud. This was the real reward. Not applause, not praise, but a quiet voice from a small corner of Africa saying, "Thank you." Traoré closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "Now, we keep going." But what he didn't know was, a storm was brewing back in the United States. Within 24 hours, millions had seen the moment. The clip of Traoré's speech reached 78 countries. African strength trended. But not everyone was pleased. Back in Washington, conservative media hosts began lashing out. One anchor sneered, "This Traoré guy? "He's dangerous. He made our former president look weak." Another said, "These so-called African leaders think they can humiliate America on live TV? No way." Some even demanded the U.S. withdraw aid from Burkina Faso, a country still healing from years of instability. At the same time, thousands of Americans, especially young people and black communities, rallied behind Traoré, calling him a voice of dignity in a noisy world. But in the middle of it all, an email arrived at Traoré's official office in Ouagadougou from the White House. The president requests a private call with Captain Traoré, urgently. The world held its breath. Would he accept? Would he back down? The people of Africa were watching, but deep down, Ibrahim Traoré already knew what he had to do. "If they want to talk, let them talk," he whispered. "But I will not apologize for telling the truth." The phone rang at exactly 4 p.m., Burkina Faso time. A secure line. Only one caller. Traoré picked up, standing by the open window of his presidential office. "Captain," a voice said, "this is President William Hartley. I represent the United States now." It wasn't Trump anymore, but the tone was the same. Cold, defensive, strategic. "I hope you understand the damage caused by your remarks. You embarrassed a former American president on live television." Traoré didn't raise his voice. He didn't apologize. Instead, he answered, "You worry about embarrassment. I worry about survival." There was silence on the line. Traoré continued, "When children in my country drink dirty water and die, that is an embarrassment. When women give birth in the dark because there's no electricity, that is the shame. If America wants to partner with Africa, then respect must come first." The U.S. president tried to respond, but there was nothing left to say. The call ended, and within minutes, a staff member ran into the room. "Captain, the clip is everywhere. Even in New York, people are cheering you in the streets." Outside, a crowd had gathered, not with signs, but with candles, and one banner. "We are not weak, we are waking up." As the world buzzed with Traoré's words, most people saw a leader, but only a few knew the boy behind the uniform. That night, alone in his office, Traoré opened a drawer and pulled out an old-school report card, faded, edges torn. Name: Ibrahim Traoré. Age 12. Remarks: very bright but hungry, sleeps in class, still never gives up. He remembered it clearly, the day he fainted in school. No breakfast, no lunch, just the sun beating down on his skin. He remembered his teacher, Madame Binta, lifting him in her arms, whispering, "One day, you will speak for us all." He had smiled then, not knowing what that meant. Now, sitting in the quiet glow of the presidential light, he whispered back, "I hope I made you proud, madam." He placed the report card back in the drawer. Because no matter how far you rise, some scars never leave you. And maybe they're not meant to. Because pain, when held with dignity, becomes power. And that's what the world had seen in Geneva. Not just a soldier. They saw a child who never gave up. 2 days later, something strange happened. A handwritten letter arrived, delivered by hand. No name on the outside. Inside, it simply read, "I don't agree with you, but you made me think. For that, thank you." It was signed. Donald J. Trump. Traoré stared at the letter, unsure how to feel. Was it real? His advisor had it verified. The signature matched. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He just whispered, "Even thunder makes people listen." And he folded it carefully. It wasn't an apology, but it was something even rarer. Acknowledgement. That small letter lit up every newsroom across Africa. News anchors couldn't believe it. "Trump never backs down," one said. "But this is respect." Social media exploded. Letter to Traoré trended worldwide, but the captain didn't reply. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. In the heart of the Sahel, a woman lit a candle and said to her son, "You see, words are stronger than weapons." And far away, a child in Harlem stood tall during show and tell and said, "I want to be like Captain Traoré." The Geneva summit was supposed to move on, but the world wouldn't let it. More than 19 heads of state requested to speak, many from Africa. But the organizers chose only one, President John Mahama of Ghana. He walked on stage and stood beside Traoré. Then he said into the mic, "I will not speak today." Gasps rippled through the room. He turned to him. "Captain, would you honor us by finishing what you started?" The room broke into applause. Ibrahim looked shocked. He shook his head humbly, but he held his arm and said, "Let the world hear the rest." He stepped forward, but not with pride, with grace. He looked at the audience and began. "When I spoke last, it wasn't to shame anyone, it was to wake us all up. We have enough conferences, enough panels, enough promises. What we need now is action." Every word shook the hall. Cameras rolled, phones streamed, hearts opened, and behind the stage, a UN interpreter was seen wiping her eyes. Because sometimes history doesn't ask for permission. It simply arrives, dressed in courage. As Traoré left the stage, glowing with quiet strength, newsrooms scrambled. Not everyone wanted to see an African rise. One major Western outlet released a grainy video, years old. It showed a young Ibrahim Traoré in uniform during a village conflict. People running, screams, smoke. The headline screamed, "The man they call a hero or a warlord." Social media exploded, rumors, accusations, spliced footage, ugly narratives. Back in Burkina Faso, his people watched in pain. In Geneva, the press circled like vultures. One reporter asked, "Captain, is it true you once gave the order that led to civilian harm?" Traoré didn't blink. He walked up to the microphone. "Yes, that is me. That was a day I will never forget." The room went quiet. But here's what the video doesn't show. I ordered an evacuation. I screamed for civilians to run before the armed rebels reached them. The camera caught the smoke, not the tears, not the prayers, not the boy I carried on my back to safety. He paused. "Don't make heroes perfect. Make them honest." And with that, the room went silent. But millions watching, they cried. That evening, after the video storm settled, a quiet knock came on Captain Traoré's hotel door. An old woman stood there wearing a simple scarf and sandals. She was barely 5 feet tall, but Ibrahim froze. "Madame Binta?" She smiled, eyes soft. "I heard your voice on the news. I recognized it, even after all these years." He fell to his knees. This was the woman who saved him in school, who carried him when he fainted from hunger, who told him he would one day lead. She had come from Ouagadougou, quietly, alone. Traoré held her hand and whispered, "I thought you were gone." She laughed gently. Africa never forgets its sons. She placed a small gift in his hand, an old piece of chalk wrapped in cloth. "For your next lesson." That image, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, holding chalk in one hand and wiping tears with the other, was captured by a journalist and posted online. It reached 15 million views by sunrise, and a tweet from a Ghanaian student summed it up best. "He's not just a leader, he's the lesson." The summit's final day arrived. Many had spoken, but the world still buzzed with Traoré's name. As closing remarks were about to begin, a young girl, barely 11, stepped forward from the Children's Observers Group. Her name was Layla, from Mali. Timid, her voice barely audible, she asked, "Captain, do you ever get scared?" The room quieted. Traoré knelt before her, eye level. He smiled softly. "Every day, Layla, Every time I see a hungry child or a mother give birth without light, every time I walk into a meeting where I know I'll be underestimated, but I still stand, because fear is not weakness. It's a reminder that what we do matters. Tears fell down the girl's face. My father died in a mine. He always wanted to hear someone like you. Traoré pulled something from his pocket. It was a small stone, from the village he was born. He pressed it into her hand. Now you carry his voice, and mine. The room rose to its feet, not in applause, but in grief, love, and awe. Because in that moment the world realized Africa wasn't asking for permission. Africa was leading. Just hours after the summit ended, as Traoré prepared to return to Burkina Faso, news broke. A school in a small village in northern Burkina Faso had been attacked by armed extremists. 2 teachers killed, several children missing. Traoré, who had just inspired the world with words, now faced a different stage, the battlefield of pain. His face changed. He canceled all interviews, all press, and flew home immediately. At the airport, crowds gathered, not chanting, not clapping, just waiting, in silence. When Traoré stepped off the plane, he wasn't in a suit. He wore his old combat boots, and on his chest, a single pin, a chalk stick, in honor of the teachers. I have spoken for Africa, he told the press. Now I must stand with her, again. He traveled directly to the village. No cameras, no speeches. He dug with his hands. He carried bodies. He held grieving mothers. And when a lost girl, 8 years old, was found alive in a hut, he wrapped her in his coat, knelt, and wept. Because heroes don't rise to be praised. They rise to carry pain with dignity. The story of Traoré's return spread like fire. But not through headlines, through people. A young man in Senegal sold his only bicycle and mailed the money with a note. Build a new classroom. For them. In Brazil, a group of high schoolers painted a mural of the summit moment. Below it they wrote, "Truth has no accent." In Paris, a woman left flowers outside the Burkinabe embassy with a note that read, "Not my president, but my hero." In Harlem, a girl named Amina used her lunch money to buy a single white rose and mailed it, alone, to Burkina Faso. Traoré received it personally. He placed the rose on the grave of one of the fallen teachers and whispered, "Even when we cry, we are never alone." The world had seen him on a stage, but it was these moments, in the dirt, in silence, that made him unforgettable. This wasn't just a story about Africa rising. It was a story of humanity remembering what leadership is supposed to look like. Not loud, not perfect, just true. Back at the presidential office in Ouagadougou, Traoré sat before a camera. Not for glory, but for the people. He spoke softly. You watched me speak in Geneva. You heard me challenge the world. But now, I ask you something greater. Look around your home, your school, your family. Look where hope still breathes, and protect it. He held up the chalk stick Madame Binta had given him. This is what built me, not power, not position, but teachers, mothers, children, pain, love, truth. If I fall tomorrow, let it be known. I spoke for those who never got the chance. His voice cracked. And if you remember anything, remember this. Africa is not behind. She's only been held back. He paused, looked into the lens, and then said the words that would be etched in history. We don't want pity. We want to be heard. Then he stood and walked away. If you felt something today, if this story made you think, cry, or hope again, please do one thing. Like this video. Comment what part broke you the most. And most importantly, subscribe so these stories never stop reaching the hearts that need them. Write something in the comments. Tell the world what you're feeling right now. We're building a space where stories like this can heal, Thank you for feeling this with us. This isn't just a video. This is a movement.